would endure the paperwork. "Everything all right, Commander?" Catherine asked, her voice a cool breeze in the humid air. "Just inherited a kingdom of clogged sinks and garter belt shortages," Kate, McHale said with a lopsided grin. "Well," she smiled, a rare, genuine thing that made his chest tighten. "If anyone can navigate those waters, it's you. Just try not to start a revolution before dinner." Chapter 3. The Sultan and the Secret Heart. The peace of command lasted exactly 45 minutes. News reached the base that the Sultan of Marami was seeking asylum. He was arriving with his 3 daughters, fleeing the Japanese advance. Binghamton, hearing this from his sickbed, was furious. He wanted the prestige of hosting royalty, but he was stuck playing the invalid. When the Sultan's craft arrived, it was like a scene from another century. The Sultan, Karim, was a man of immense gravity, draped in silk that shimmered like oil on water. Behind him stood 3 princesses, their faces veiled, their eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Among McHale's crew, Lester Gruber, the group's primary fixer and hopeless romantic, felt his heart do a backflip. His eyes locked onto the youngest princess, Siri. There was a spark there, a defiance that resonated with his own rebellious soul. "Wowie, wow, wow," Gruber whispered, leaning against a crate of ammunition. The Sultan was not impressed with the American military machine. "The next man who dares to debase the dignity of the princesses will answer to me," he declared, his hand resting on the hilt of a ceremonial dagger. But as the Sultan was moved into his quarters, a clandestine drama began. Gruber, using his fixer skills, managed to sneak a moment with Siri near the hibiscus groves. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the distant hum of the jungle. "In my country, my father would have your head for this," Siri whispered, her veil shifting to reveal a smile that could stop a torpedo. "In my country," Gruber replied, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hum. "They call this international relations. You're the most beautiful thing I've seen since I left Brooklyn, princess." It was a dangerous game. Gruber was pretending to be a high-ranking officer, and Siri was playing along, desperate for a moment of freedom from her gilded cage. But the romance was cut short when Binghamton, fueled by jealousy and stomach acid, tried to frame McHale's crew for kidnapping the princesses. Binghamton burst into the Sultan's quarters, shouting, "One of these girls is an imposter, a phony Balinese bunny." He grabbed at a veil, only to realize he had insulted the Sultan's eldest daughter. The Sultan was outraged. "Your unpardonable behavior will be reported to the State Department." McHale stepped in, smoothing over the disaster with his trademark charm, while Catherine watched from the sidelines, impressed by how he handled the royalty with more grace than the actual captain. But the tension was far from over. Chapter 4. The Haunting of PT-13. The pressure on McHale increased as Binghamton recovered miraculously to witness Iron Pants Rafferty's arrival. Binghamton was determined to prove McHale was unfit. He started a rumor that McHale's boat was actually the PT-13, a jinxed vessel with a history of disappearing crews. "It's a ghost ship, McHale," Binghamton sneered. "Everyone knows the 13 is cursed. You and your men are living on borrowed time." The crew, superstitious as all sailors are, began to panic. Even McHale felt a chill he couldn't explain. But McHale wasn't one to be haunted by anything other than his own conscience. He realized Binghamton was using a haunted boat routine to scare the men into requesting transfers. "If he wants ghosts," McHale told his crew, "we'll give him the grandest haunting in the history of the Navy." Using white sheets, phosphorus paint, and a bit of ingenuity, the crew of the 73 turned the base into a supernatural nightmare. They waited until Binghamton was alone in his shack, nursing his indigestion. Wally Binghamton. A spectral voice moaned through the vents. Binghamton sat bolt upright, his eyes bulging. "Who's there? I have a gun. I'm a superior officer." "We are the ghosts of PT-13. The captain fled into the night, screaming about angelic visitations and demon boats, right into the arms of Admiral Rafferty. The admiral looked at his shivering commander, and then at the calm, professional McHale standing nearby. Binghamton, Rafferty barked. Are you having another hallucination? Or do I need to send you back to the States for a psychological evaluation? McHale shared a quiet laugh with Catherine later that night. You're a terrible person, Quentin McHale, she said, though she was leaning against his shoulder. Just protecting the fleet from superstition, Kate, he replied, looking out at the moonlit lagoon. Chapter 5. The Alligator's Trial. The final conflict came down to a matter of cold, hard cash. A base payroll of $62,000 went missing during a transport overseen by Parker. Binghamton was convinced he finally had them. Grand larceny, theft of government funds. It's the firing squad for you. Parker. McHale knew his executive officer was many things. Clumsy, nervous, and prone to sneezing, but he wasn't a thief. The search was on. Not just for the money, but for a witness. That witness turned out to be Sydney, an alligator that the crew had adopted as a mascot. Sydney had been seen near the payroll drop with a leather wallet in his mouth. The alligator stole the payroll? Binghamton screamed in the courtroom. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. McHale, you're grasping at straws. But McHale had a plan. He brought Sydney into the court-martial, much to the horror of the judge-advocate. Order! Order in the court! The judge yelled, as the alligator hissed at the captain. Sydney, old boy, McHale said, kneeling beside the beast. Tell the court where you found the wallet. Parker offered Sydney a peanut butter sandwich, his favorite treat. As the alligator opened his jaws to receive the bribe, a wallet fell out. It wasn't just any wallet. It contained the ID card of one of Binghamton's own trusted aides, who had actually staged the theft to frame McHale. The room fell silent. Binghamton turned a shade of purple that was almost poetic. The charges against Parker were dismissed, and the hero of Taratupa, Alligator, was given a formal commendation and a jar of extra crunchy peanut butter. Epilogue. Tides of the heart. The war didn't end that day, but on Taratupa, the victory felt complete. McHale stood on the pier, the engines of the 73, humming a low, contented song. Catherine walked up to him, the evening breeze catching the hem of her nurse's uniform. I hear Sydney is being promoted to Chief Petty Alligator, she joked. He's earned it, McHale said, turning to look at her. The humor faded, replaced by something deeper, something that had been growing since the first day he saw her in the infirmary. Kate, this war, it doesn't give us much time for anything. I know, she said, her voice soft. But when it's over, he continued, taking her hand, I'd like to show you a version of the Pacific that doesn't involve torpedoes or angry admirals. Just the sea and the sky. Catherine smiled, and for the first time, she didn't look weary. She looked hopeful. I think I'd like that, Quentin. Wow, 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 McHale whispered, pulling her closer as the tides of Taratupa rolled in, washing away the footprints of the day's battles and leaving only the promise of the dawn. Tides of Taratupa, a novel of the South Pacific. Prologue, The Humidity of War. The South Pacific was not merely a theater of war. It was a living, breathing entity of salt, sweat, and emerald shadows. On the island of Taratupa, the air hung heavy like a wet wool blanket, smelling of diesel fuel, rotting hibiscus, and the faint, metallic tang of the coming monsoon. For Captain Wallace B. Binghamton, known derisively by the men as Old Lead Bottom, the island was a purgatory of incompetence. He sat in his sweltering office, the overhead fan merely stirring the stagnant heat, staring at a requisition form for garter belts. Wow, 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 he muttered, his stomach lining dissolving in a familiar cocktail of acid and frustration. Garter belts. I am the commanding officer of a strategic naval base, and I am hunting for hosiery. If the nurses need them, they snap to it. I mean, shake a leg. But across the lagoon, hidden in the mangroves, lay the PT-73 and its crew. Led by the charismatic and perpetually disheveled Commander Quentin McHale, they were a breed apart. To the Navy, they were a disgrace. To the locals, they were legends. Chapter 1. The Sultan's Shadow. the news arrived like a thunderclap. The Sultan of Marami was